Well. Just when we express some real doubt in the K-State coaching staff and what's happening in the transfer portal, within the span of like 4 days, K-State lands a really, really good assistant coach hire that's a former head coach with great offensive experience, a great offensive mind, and they lock down PJ Haggerty, a top 5 player in the portal, the best portal get if you're going by rankings of the Jerome Tang era. So today we're going to tell you all about how we are ugly and dumb. K-State coaches are quite handsome and very smart, and K-State looks like they've got a much better roster. All right, welcome into Three Ma. It is live. Happy Memorial Day. Very drizzly, dreary Memorial Day in Kansas City. Not sure how the weather is in Texas where Cole is. DY, not sure how it is in Manhattan either. But it's a beautiful, bright, sunshiny day. If you are a K-State basketball fan, because the Cats landed a second-team All-American, the American Athletic Conference Player of the Year, PJ Haggerty, bucket getter. And that calls for a toast from our friends at Holiday Distillery. Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon, all around for everybody. What, Cole, what was the name of the guy on Twitter? Is it like Nordy Jelson? Is it like turned around the opposite way that bought some Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon and shouted us out?
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the quote tweet that I had of his the other day. Actually, I think he shouted us out on Saturday. Yeah, it's Nordy_Jelson that had a bottle of Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon. And then C. Bergie35 quote replied to that tweet with another bottle of Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon.
Wow.
So
the people love it. The people love it is the point. They said that it was directly because of this ad. So they credited Cole and I. You know, I'm just saying, sorry, DY, you didn't get any of the credit. It was all me and Cole. But we pushed the Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon on them, and the people love it. So you can be the next. Tweet us about it. We'll talk about you on the show. All right. It's at JL Kurtz, at Cole_Manbeck to do that. But make sure you include DY this time. Okay. It's Derek Young KSO, right? At Derek Young KSO?
I believe so.
Okay. We believe so. All right. You can also get 360 vodka. Great stuff from our friends at Holiday Distillery. As you can tell, we're all in a good mood today. And guys, Cole, if you ever doubt, one, whether or not you should be a member of the Discord, patreon.com/3ma to do that. But two, that we don't know our stuff and have this info early. I went back. Today is May 26th. I went back in the Discord to May 6th. Okay. May 6th, Cole sends a message that says, I almost crystal balled Haggerty to K-State last Thursday. Okay. So this is like the first week of May. Maybe that was even April at that point when Cole was about to crystal ball Haggerty to K-State, which means that's when we first started hearing about this. Okay. Coaches did a great job of keeping this really stealthy. We were hearing about this. We were just ye of too little faith. And I tried to shout Cole down from crystal balling this. Now, part of that is because Cole has set people up for disappointment in the past by doing that too recklessly. Okay. But on May 6th, after Cole said that, one, I said that Cole was wish casting. Which, whoops. And then two, I said, if we land Haggerty, I will eat a beefy 5-layer burrito on the podcast.
So when are you doing that?
I said that on May 6th. So, ladies and gentlemen,
oh gosh,
this is a beefy 5-layer burrito.
Gross.
Right here. I stopped at Taco Bell on the way back home a minute ago for probably the first time in like 4 years. I mean, I have not been to Taco Bell in a very long time.
With your diet and exercise behavior, you are going to hate your life after that, I think.
So, okay, I was trying to remember what my other tweet was. I said that if K-State landed both PJ Haggerty and Watkins, what was Watkins first? The Florida State kid? Jameer. I was going to, yeah, okay.
I think
if they land both, I said if they landed both Jameer Watkins and PJ Haggerty, the Discord would be able to choose something about what I did with the beefy 5-layer burrito. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that. It's just me eating it. So here we go.
You're going to give a Mason Voth rating for it? Well,
God, this does not taste good.
No, it's.
Well, there went Taco Bell as a future sponsor.
Guys, do you guys eat this regularly?
No, I don't make bets, with 5-layer burritos. I mean, I trust the information we have. So,
God,
yeah.
That was, I can't eat the rest of that, man.
No, you have to. I mean, you have to, or else we can't have you be responsible for this team not making the NCAA tournament because you didn't follow through on what you did. Now, you don't have to do it on this show because I'm sure people really don't probably want to watch you eat the 5-layer bean burrito the whole time. But we'll need proof. I'm
just going to put it in the freezer.
I don't think that'll work. So
that was a reference. That was a reference to Cole. Remember how much you loved the first beefy 5-layer burrito guy. So
oh yeah, man, I hated that. I absolutely hated the attention and everything that drove. And I know I probably sounded like the get off my lawn guy, but I really could not stand.
Sound like the get off my lawn guy.
All right, well, sorry for everybody that I sound like that, but yeah. You win in the portal for Kansas State, and now John.
No. Wait, one second, guys. Let me just reemphasize that these are disgusting. Who eats this? Who eats this? I mean, that is the beans. What are those? That is so bad. The texture is awful. The taste is awful. The tortilla is like stale. Oh man, worst $5 I've ever spent. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. We're never going to be sponsored by Taco Bell. It's just never going to happen.
That might be a good thing.
It's a good thing if we ever have to eat anything. Oh, boy. Don't have them cater the tailgate, all right? Okay.
Back on track, John.
K-State landed PJ Haggerty. That's a good thing. That's a great thing. Shout out to KSU_fan, who I saw had charted all of the rankings, like most popular portal rankings. I mean, he was top 5 in at least 3 or 4 of them, and definitely was the highest rated of anybody that K-State's landed. I mean, higher than Coleman Hawkins, Tyler Perry, whoever it is in the portal era. I think that's a nice jumping off point here. This is a big get, not only because I think, look, last year Coleman Hawkins was a huge deal, but Coleman Hawkins was one where we were all sitting around this is where, as wrong as I just looked with the Discord chat there, I said at the time, the Coleman Hawkins thing, just from a positional standpoint fit, it just felt like an awkward rotational fit with the roster with how many different bigs that you had. And then it was, well, Coleman Hawkins, can he play the 3? This makes a lot of sense. K-State needs a bucket getting guard, guy that can handle the ball and go score. And they got it. So it's a much better fit. He's higher ranked. Coleman Hawkins, love him. Great player, but he was second team All Big Ten. This is second team All American.
13.
This is a very big deal. Okay, third team.
Yeah. No, if you think about it from an accolade standpoint, a statistical standpoint, a ranking standpoint, there is a clear argument to be made that he is the best transfer that not only that Jerome Tang has made, probably the just if you take all 3 of those things into account, the best transfer Kansas State's landed across the board in either football or basketball, in my opinion. I don't know that you're going to find anything close to that. He was a second team All-American last year. He's the number 3 transfer in the country. Some spots have him number 2. I think number 2 and number 3 were the most common rankings for him. And, we got a little bit of egg on our face too. I guess they can kind of dunk on us a bit because, our last show, I think or maybe 2 shows ago, is titled, Kansas State portal thing doesn't make sense. I think that was our title. And now it does, to be quite honest. And especially if they can go out and maybe get a big to kind of bring this thing all together, because now you have that ball dominant guard that you needed that can also score, that is also a top of the rotation player. Because we were kind of thinking they feel like they have a lot of second and third options. Now you got your first option, and that settles guys like Bashir, Kostic, Nate Johnson, Marcus Johnson, whoever you want to name, into the exact role that they should be playing. So it makes the roster fit, it makes the rules defined and fit. We went from, probably stupidly at the time because we didn't have enough patience, saying this portal thing doesn't make sense, to now it does. Now they had to thread the needle for it to make sense. I'll give you that, but they threaded that needle and they deserve credit for it.
Well, I would still say, DY, I think I question in this era taking a guy that's going to redshirt. I mean, I just don't think there's value really in redshirting guys. And so the Osei commitment still doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And I don't mean to go negative here, but
I guess to me, because I'm under the clear impression that their strategy and approach is to now carry more than 13, because I don't think they're done.
Well, they're not done.
Yeah. So if you go out and get Repeat and another player, that's more than 13. Then I think you can afford to redshirt Osei.
Yeah.
I
mean,
but yes. But again, in our defense, coaches smell great, look great, all those things. They're awesome. In our defense, we were operating under the assumption that I think was good information at the time, at least at one point this offseason, that they were going to have a 13-man roster.
Right.
And so if we're going under, hey, we know that the agreement was they're going to have a 13-man roster, and then you're doing the math, if Rapeak is in fact on the team, which we believe he is, then I still would say with Cole, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But I think what's probably going to happen now is that they're going to push that and have a roster with more than 13.
Yep.
Assuming Tyreek Smith gets his waiver, and then I still think they want another big. I mean, I think they're going to be targeting a skilled big type or a back to the basket big to fill out this roster as they look to finish it out. But, we said all along they needed a bona fide stud, and they get that now. And I'm not here to dunk on Coleman Hawkins, but the difference here is pretty drastic in terms of the addition. I mean, they're completely different players. Coleman Hawkins obviously distributing like point forward type.
One's more impactful.
Yeah. I mean, Coleman Hawkins is a guy that's going to average 11 to 13 points per game and kind of distribute the basketball and impact winning in a variety of different ways. But to your point, DY, and to John, his ceiling was a third team All Big Ten player while he was at Illinois. And we're talking about a guy here who is a second team All-American by the AP Press and was the National Association of Basketball Coaches third team All-American, the American Athletic Conference Player of the Year, and the year prior in the American Athletic Conference when he was at Tulsa before he went to Memphis was the Freshman of the Year when he averaged 21.2 points per game. He was 15th in the country in scoring at Tulsa last year, the year prior, and he was third in the country in scoring this year. Like, he is a dynamic scorer and playmaker.
With that debate too, I think also it matters that he's a guard. I think you could just have, at least in college, I think it's fair to say, you could have more of a direct impact and affect winning more easily from the backcourt than you can the front court.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. It feels, I'm going to be honest, it feels a little bit redemptive to me almost for like, I wanted the backcourt dynamic score last year in Caleb Battle and felt like had that wrapped up. And this is why we were very, very, very careful, probably too careful around PJ Haggerty when we believed like they were legitimately involved and nobody was mentioning it because we lived through Caleb Battle last year when it was there. I mean, basically, literally something was signed, sealed, delivered, but yet it wasn't actually.
I think they had a couple of those this year too. It's just maybe that's the nature of recruiting now, but like it is not a done deal until it's absolutely a done deal in recruiting anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were all pretty quiet on this for the most part, and there was a reason for it. I mean, in the transfer portal, you don't want it broadcast far and wide for a coveted player like this, who's in on who, and, they know who's got the war chest when it comes to it. And I mean, candidly, guys, I would say that K-State got a decent bargain here, and I'm sure we can get into that some, but like when you think about
maybe the bargain of the entire cycle.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about the 4 million number being thrown around for PJ Haggerty on the day that he entered the portal about a month ago, and his father demanding he play point guard and the 4 million number, and then Adam Zagoria's tweet that, and it sounds like this jives with what we're hearing, that it was a $2 million NIL deal plus around a $500K incentive laden deal on top of that. So maybe $2.5 million all in. I mean, frankly, guys, that in this portal era where things are and money's being spent, that's a heck of a bargain.
Yeah.
He's not close to the top expensive player.
No, he's a second team All-American that plays guard. In contrast it to another guy that's a hell of a player, JT Toppin was just a Big 12 Player of the Year, but he plays in the front court, and he got $4 million from Texas Tech.
Yeah, well, Darian Williams was over 3, right, at NC State. So, yeah, out of all these guys here that were big potential ads, I think you got to feel, I don't know what really the criticism could be of this move in and of itself. I mean, you could still disagree with other things, I suppose, about the the offseason, maybe still have questions about the rest of the roster. They need to get better inside, find another nice big here. It's still kind of late in the process, whatever. A lot of things you could say, but I don't know, man. Look at what's happening in Lawrence. Like there's a lot of consternation about their roster here this late, and they didn't land their PJ Haggerty guy.
I don't think it's the reason, but I do think it didn't hurt. And it probably helped at least a little bit that Kansas couldn't close the deal on Darian Williams too.
Yeah. Hold that thought. Let's get to that in just a moment. Maybe if you guys look, our friends in Lawrence are spending a lot of money on football these days, which I do think is smart. We talked about that, but it sounds like Bill Self could use a little bit of help. So maybe if you all go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code 3MOD24 to get 15% off your first order, you can buy up a bunch of KU gear, sell it on the black market or something, and then donate that to the Williams Fund. And maybe Bill Self will have enough money to close on a Darian Williams to prevent his in-state rival from landing a big player that probably just wraps up yet another season split between K-State and Kansas. Or you could just buy great K-State gear because they've got 50-plus K-State designs there. They've got 100-plus other teams. Does not appear that Derek is DY, I would have thought today would be a day for a K-State home field apparel. Sure, you're always celebrating everybody else when they do something big. You celebrated Miami for landing the number 1 college football player in the class of 26 the other day, but you don't even wear a K-State shirt today.
Yeah, I was doing things all day, just never changed. So that's on me.
All right. Okay. We're not perfect, folks. Clearly, we're not perfect, as evidenced by our last show. But home field apparel is as close to perfect as you can get. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code 3MOD24 for 15% off your first order, and we're back in just a moment.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Folks, it's playoff time, and if you're still just watching games, then you're missing out. With Pick 6 from DraftKings, you can turn your hoops knowledge into real cash. Just make your picks, track your score, and if you hit all 6, you're looking at bigger payouts than Prize Picks flex plays. Nobody's dropping better payouts than Pick 6. Hit 6 picks, and that's 25 times your cash. And if you beat your competition, you could be looking at a 500 times bag in your pocket. And right now, new customers can get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry. Here's what you got to do. The playoffs are on, so why not take a shot at making a little money while you're watching? Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN to play $5 and get $50 in bonus picks. Better payouts, bigger wins, only on Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. Terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Boy, that was a very seductive Tucker D. Franklin. I feel like that was just telling me to go place a couple of bets, man. That was boy, the guy gets married and wins, gets engaged and wins KCSN Employee of the Year, and all of a sudden really finding different ways to utilize him. Need a cigarette or something before we start here. We got PJ Haggerty and Tucker D. Franklin doing all of that, man. Woof, boy. Don't know how this day could get a whole lot better, but here's a way. DY brought up a really interesting angle on this. And that is that Kansas was in the running for Darian Williams, who goes to NC State, who then bowed out of the PJ Haggerty sweepstakes. Now, as we have said here, like K-State was involved for a long time, and the way that this was portrayed publicly by like Joe Tipton and others who were following this recruitment, it made it seem like K-State really wasn't involved until all of a sudden NC State was kind of on its way out because they didn't have enough cash left over after giving a huge bag to Darian Williams of Texas Tech. K-State was there for a while. Like I mentioned, like that first message from Cole came on May 6th, and he said he had almost crystal balled him the week before. So this goes back a long way. K-State's coaches put in a lot of work here. May not have been the deciding factor, but it certainly didn't hurt. It certainly didn't hurt that Kansas did not land Darian Williams, because if they do, obviously Kansas gets better, and then NC State is sitting around like, well, we still need another really impact player. Will Wade has been incredibly aggressive. They're probably throwing more money than out there at PJ Haggerty. And at the very least, I'd imagine maybe it gets more expensive to land PJ Haggerty there. So everybody does need to, I guess, tip your cap to, I don't know if it would be Bill Self, probably more so Travis Goff from the sounds of it, and how Kansas is choosing to allocate its resources these days. But that definitely helped. That was a nice little bang bang for the Cats that Darian Williams chooses NC State, and then PJ Haggerty is a Cat.
Yeah, those things were, like I said, not the factor, but it wasn't a coincidence. And I think NC State knew that they weren't going to be able to afford both guys. I think there was an even days before, not long before NC State landed Darian Williams, where Will Wade did an interview with Jeff Goodman on the field of 68 and basically said, we are one guy short of our goals, which kind of tipped me off that they probably weren't going to, try for both Darian Williams and PJ Haggerty. So while I thought Kansas State was probably trending anyway, or at least we all had the information that they probably were, I think it probably solidified itself even more concretely when NC State got Darian Williams, knowing full well that they just didn't either have the space or maybe financial resources to spread out to both of those guys.
Certainly didn't hurt, but I'm of the belief that Kansas State, even if Darian Williams didn't go to North Carolina State, I believe that Kansas State would have landed PJ Haggerty regardless. And so there's a lot of misreporting on the PJ Haggerty recruitment. And the thing that we were always told for weeks was, don't believe the publicly reported information that is out there regarding his recruitment. There was a stretch where they had 4 schools connected to him, right? It was Ole Miss, it was North Carolina State. I can't remember the other 2 schools, but he had like a top 4. And the information was like, don't necessarily buy into that. And Kansas State is at least involved behind the scenes talking to PJ Haggerty. And so, the DY, you did a nice job playing dumb last week, by the way, on PJ Haggerty's recruitment. And some of the reporting around it, even after the Hitmen report from Memphis came out from that social media account, the reporting on it afterwards was like, oh, this is an inaccurate report, not necessarily from you. You weren't saying that, but there were others saying this. There's no validity to this. There's no truth to it. And so we knew that wasn't the case. The Darian Williams thing certainly didn't hurt. If anything, that tilted things even farther in Kansas State's favor probably. But I think Kansas State sat in a very good spot regardless. I mean, are you telling me, do we think at that price point that Will Wade and NC State maybe couldn't have rallied the donors to get to that number and matched at least? Because I think we anticipated to be a far higher number, north of 3 at the very least, not 2.5.
Yeah, it would have been more expensive. NC State didn't get Darian Williams, I can tell you that much, but NC State's already spent a lot. That's their issue too.
That's what I was going to say, Cole. I mean, I don't know. There is a limit because, and look, full disclosure, I've listened to a lot of the Kansas discourse because I was very curious about what was going on after they missed on Sarr and then they missed on Darian Williams. But it seems like, hey, yeah, I mean, you can just go tap another donor to get the extra $500K or whatever for this guy. There's like a bigger picture at play, and sometimes there's different factors that we don't really think about. I don't know what's going on with NC State other than they just had spent a ton of money on the rest of the roster, right? But like with Kansas, it sounded like it was kind of like, hey, Travis Goff thinks football is a priority, so they're going to dump more money and resources into football. You've got a lot of these donors who are being tapped right now to make sure that stadium gets built, and then they're having to pay more for their football recruiting class right now, which we talked about the other day on the show. And if you're trying to go get an extra pile of money for a basketball recruit here, they could look around and be like, well, we just did this the last 2 years and paid a ton of money for Rylan Griffin and AJ Storr and all these guys who were supposed to be great recruits that cost a lot of money, and you haven't won with them. So, I know there can always be other politics there. I don't think it's always as easy as fans would make it seem like, oh, just go tell the rich guy to throw more money out there.
That's fair.
Neither here nor there. But anyway, okay, well, how are you feeling now as this fits into the big picture of the roster? Let's go to that point. Cole, how are you feeling about PJ Haggerty and how he fits into the grand context and grand scheme of this roster and what the ceiling of the team is now?
Well, I mean, go ahead, D-Way.
I was like, you had a lot of free throw numbers that you were tossing our way.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah. So, I mean, guys, as you think about last year's K-State basketball team, I mean, what is one of the things that really stood out to you as something they had to be better at? I mean, we talked about it all year. They were 326th in the country in free throw rate last year at a 27.6 rate. And if you look at the numbers, David Gasson led K-State with 124 free throw attempts. Doug McDaniel had 58 attempts at the foul line. Brendan Hassan, 66. Coleman Hawkins, 78. Max Jones, 80. CJ Jones, 46 attempts. David Castillo, 25. Look, K-State had 520 attempts as a team at the foul line last year. They made 362. PJ Haggerty in the last 2 seasons of college basketball combined has attempted 583 free throws himself. Again, K-State had 520 as a team last year. He made 461 of those 583 free throw attempts, so a very good clip, around 80%. He made 224 free throws last season, guys, out of 274 attempts. It's 82% at the foul line. K-State's guards collectively, Doug McDaniel, Max Jones, Brandon Hassan, CJ Jones, David Castillo, they combined to attempt 275 free throw attempts. They made 210. PJ Haggerty made 224 on 274. He matched what those guys did collectively as an entire guard tandem. PJ Haggerty, guys, in the last 2 years of college basketball, he has been second in the country in free throw attempts and free throw makes each of the 2023-24 seasons and the 2024-25 season at Memphis. This is a dude that gets to the free throw line at an extremely high clip, and he finishes at the free throw line. And that's something K-State's needed to do. They needed to get better at finishing at the rim, finishing through contact, drawing contact. Again, now your point guard, PJ Haggerty, probably going to be your primary point guard, a guy who attempted 274 free throw attempts this last year and over 300 the year before, compared to Doug McDaniel, who was 58 attempts last year. I mean, he shied away from contact. He tried that floater. Now you got a guy that's going to assert himself, his will. He's 6'3", measured 6'2.25" at the NBA Combine. But he's a stronger finisher, and he's going to figure out a way to get to the rim and finish through there, or get to the foul line and finish at an extremely high clip. I mean, he had a game in 2023-24, guys, where he attempted 22 free throws. All right, he had 15 games of 10 or more free throws in 2023-24 and 10 games of 14 attempts or more that year at Tulsa. And then this last year, very similar numbers, 13 games of 10-plus free throws this last year. He had a game where he went 14 of 14 at the foul line, 12 of 12 at the foul line, 10 of 10, 10 of 11, 10 of 11. You can keep going down the list. 52.6 free throw rate this last year. That would have been the highest on K-State's team. Guys, that would have been the highest of any K-State guard in the Jerome Tang era, and a 75.6 free throw rate at Tulsa the year prior. So you're talking about one of the best guards at getting to the foul line in America.
Well, I love that. And I mean, I thought this was put very succinctly by Isaac Trotter. This is a tweet from, he's with 24/7 and CBS Sports. He said, K-State's backcourt mix makes way more sense this year. PJ Haggerty and Nate Johnson are 2 big rim pressuring guards who get to the line. Andre Kostic and Abdi Bashir are high volume shooters with size. And I mean, I think that's kind of to the point of how this roster seems to fit together so much better than last year. And it helps, like, this takes away some of the concerns that we had about how the rest of the backcourt was shaping up, right? Because like with Bashir, it's like, okay, will the game translate to this level? He was a really high volume shooter. How does that translate when you come up here? He's not a guy that looks like he's going to be maybe an elite defender. He's not somebody that really gets to the rim. But now you've got a couple guys that do. You've got a guy that can really, really defend if you're talking about Nate Johnson, and brings a lot of grittiness, toughness. It just a lot of different elements that now seem to be available there in the backcourt that you just didn't have last year.
I think I said it before, but I think the presence of Haggerty allows everyone else that they've added so far to play basically the usage and role that they should be in instead of having to overextend them. Because I thought we were seeing probably more minutes and more usage out of guys last year than maybe they should have. Like Brendan Haasen probably shouldn't have been a 30 to 35 minute player, so to speak. And I think the addition of PJ Haggerty kind of clears some of that up, because now I think Bashir, he can play more of the three now, because you can play Nate Johnson at the two. You can play Kostic at the two. We'll see what else you can get, if anything, out of, either one of Xavier Wilson or David Castillo, right? So because Haggerty's probably going to be on the floor for about 35 minutes a game, and he's an alpha. And again, they now have a backcourt that is tougher. I've said that all off season, that I thought they were tougher, because Nate Johnson's probably as tough as they come, gritty as they come, hard-nosed as they come. PJ Haggerty kind of plays in a similar style, really, to be honest. People might think he comes from Memphis and he's just like this flashy shooting type of dude, but like Cole just laid it out, like, no, he wants to be physical. He wants to get downhill. He wants to get to the free throw line. He wants to bully you in a way. So I just think that they got bigger, stronger, more physical, tougher. Like, they're not shying away from contact. They're not camping out the 3-point line. Defense is optional type of unit. There's probably an argument to be made, and I know there's other teams out there that maybe can hang their hat on this as well. They can't say could be one of the most improved backcourts in the country, and I believe that 100%.
Well, I mean, look, he's obviously a dynamic scorer and scored in double figures in 74 of 76 games in the last 2 years combined. He's been over 20 points or more in 43 of the 76 games. DY, you hit on some of the toughness things, and we just talked about getting to the foul line, and it's a guy that finishes at the rim too. This last year, according to Bart Torvik, 119 on 197 at shots at the rim, 60.4%. And then the year prior at Memphis, 112, or at Tulsa, 112, 177 on shots at the rim. That was 63.3%. You combine that, 231 at 374 on shots at the rim, that's 62%. And when you watch last year's team, how much did K-State struggle to finish through contact or finish at the rim? They would have layups. There were times, guys, where they overpassed. They would have a layup, and maybe it was a confidence thing, but they would kick it out for a three instead of taking that difficult shot at the rim, or maybe even an open shot at the rim that you would like to see him hit. Doug McDaniel was 49% at the rim last year, 68 of 138. Haasen 4 of 9. Obviously, that's not his game. He's not going to the rim all that much. 46 of 94 at the rim for Max Jones. David Castillo 1 of 7 at the rim. CJ Jones 51%, 32 of 63. Now you got a guy that gets to the rim not only at a higher clip, but finishes at a very high rate as well. So he's going to get to the rim. And then Nate Johnson, guys, 93 of 158 on shots at the rim, 59% last year. He was assisted on 43% of them, and almost a 38 free throw rate, 114 of 142 at the foul line, 80% this last year. So there's your two kind of alpha lead guards, are guys that are going to get downhill and they're going to get to the rim. Now, the concern you might have is how consistent can they be shooting the ball from the perimeter? Those two. Now, Abdi Bashir is obviously a high volume 3-point shooter and led the country in 3-point attempts and made 38.3% on over 300 attempts last year. And that's going to be his primary role. Haggerty is a guy that made a jump this last year, but before this year, he was under 30% from three. This year, he shot 36.4% from three on a little over 100 attempts. And Nate Johnson was 30% from three. So you have question marks there, and there's other things we can get into that might be question marks, and how do they fit with Matthew Driscoll's system, and what he wants to run as well. But there's a lot of pluses to where I think they've solved for some of the things we liked for them to solve for that were issues last year, with the addition of PJ Haggerty, the addition of Nate Johnson, and then Andre Kostic, who is one of my favorite recruits in the class as well, the European guard. And I think the success of this team is going to largely hinge on Elias Erpeek and Andre Kostic in terms of the ceiling of how far they can go.
That was going to be my next question, is what you feel like the floor and the ceiling are right now for this team. But Cole, I'm with you, because back to that conversation again, I know I brought up the last time I was on the show, but it was like, hey, the more Europeans you have, the more the ceiling and floor becomes potentially higher and lower on both ends, because we just don't know as much about how that's going to translate. We don't know as much about them as players. So you're still dealing with two of those. We know, I think now we can definitely confirm. I mean, the staff is very, very high on Rapik for sure. I mean, I am after watching his film, but tough to know exactly how that'll translate. But where are you at right now on floor and ceiling of this team with the addition of PJ Haggerty, and how much has that changed?
Before Cole answers that, all I would say is, like, going back to the last thing I wanted to add was that I think this addition probably is the most meaningful for Nate Johnson. I think he's going to be really, really damn good now that he doesn't have to be the best player for this team and get 100% of the team's attention and scouting report now, because that's going to be PJ Haggerty. And now Nate Johnson's in a perfect situation.
I would also add to that, DY, you know, Nate Johnson's a guy, defensive player of the year in the MAC. First of all, you add the MAC player of the year and now the AAC player of the year, all right? And from a good team. Both teams played in the NCAA tournament. Memphis went 29-6 this year. They were a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. Haggerty is a do-it-all guard. He is a stat sheet stuffer. Yeah, I averaged almost 6 rebounds per game this last year. And the year prior at Tulsa, he was almost 6 rebounds per game. And he also had 1.8 and 1.9 steals per game the last 2 seasons. He's a guy that's kind of a ball hawk defensively. Nate Johnson gets after it. You're going to get some runouts with these two kind of leading the way. Now, he can improve defensively if you read the scouting reports. They'd like to see him take a jump there. John, to answer your question, as you think about, you know, what the ceiling of this team is and the floor, if you just looked at Bart Torvik today, and I just happened to fortunately glance before it became official that Haggerty was in the fold, and I was able to add him into the formula. You're able to their team cast to be able to project ahead and add a player and see where it would take that team based off how they anticipate the numbers and analytics. K-State going into today, and this doesn't include Rapik and Kostic, because I don't think there's really a great way for Bart Torvik or the advanced analytics to count for the Europeans, which is a difficult challenge for him. But they were just looking at the 10 players plus PJ Haggerty. Before Haggerty was in the fold, K-State was ranked 68th on Bart Torvik in the country. When you added Haggerty into the formula, they jumped 24 spots overall to 44th on Bart Torvik. And their offensive efficiency, adjusted offensive efficiency, jumped from 109 to over 112. It was about a three-point jump, which is significant. Last year, they were around 109th, 116th in the country, but 109 offensive efficiency, which ranked number 116. And K-State's defensive numbers actually improved on Bart Torvik with this addition. And again, 44th, but that's not counting Kostic and Rapik, who we expect to be contributors. So, yeah, as you think about the ceiling, I still, like, even with Haggerty in the fold, guys, I think they need another player for me to just say fully, like, it's a definite NCAA tournament team. They definitely are a team that are
their ceiling is that, though.
Their ceiling, if you look at their ceiling, they're a team that could, you know, I think could be like a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament, a 7 seed. I mean, maybe as they sit today. Ceiling, is that too high? I don't know.
I just say the ceiling is NCAA tournament, and I probably can't go further than that.
I would probably, again, there's so much unknown with Kostic and Rapik and how they translate as they get over here. Like, I would just, I guess, raise the ceiling a little bit, but I'm not like.
And there's also some unknowns in the front court. Like, is Tyreek Smith good enough to just kind of handle it, or him and McGriff good enough to just handle it?
Is Tyreek Smith going to be on the roster?
Yeah. Who's the other big that they add? So I think the biggest question mark is actually the front court.
I mean, the floor, obviously, guys, or I guess. I mean, they could miss the postseason altogether. I mean, that could very easily happen.
The floor is definitely still missing the NCAA tournament.
You know, and then the ceiling, I think, could be like a six seed type team. I mean, I'm not going to, like, where I went last year, guys, over the top and saying A+ transfer portal haul. Like, I'd still fall, like, with PJ Haggerty, probably in the, like, B to B- range.
We ignored the red flags that were on last year's team probably a little too much in terms of the pieces fitting from a positional standpoint and how to play with one another. And also, let's be honest, the red flags that surrounded Doug McDaniel, we just kind of glossed over and assumed that those would disappear in Manhattan. And obviously they didn't for a large part of the year. Like, those types of red flags don't exist on this team.
Okay.
So that is essentially an upgrade in itself.
Can I mention real quick in regards to Doug McDaniel, DY, to that point? So, like, if you look at offensive rating, which PJ Haggerty had an offensive rating each of the last 2 years, 113, 114, fell kind of within that realm. Doug McDaniel had an offensive rating over 100 in only 10 games last year. 22 games he was below 100, and only 4 games he was north of 110 on an offensive rating.
It's because when he did play, it was such high usage, but he just didn't shoot well enough. I mean, that's what it really was.
Yeah, well, I mean, PJ Haggerty, from an offensive rating standpoint, was north of 110 at a far greater rate. I'm trying to find it in my notes that I had pulled.
I mean, remember how many? It seemed like even after he basically reformed himself from a behavioral and character standpoint, I say reformed himself, it became less of a flaw in the ointment, so to speak. I mean, how many times did it feel like the last month of the season that Doug was like 3 for 14 from the field?
Yeah, he had a high usage rate. The ball was in his hands. Like, part of it was he was just having to, make plays, but he also was shooting very poorly and missing wide open shots from the perimeter as well. And I found the number, guys.
And that floater was never going down.
Yeah. 6 games with an offensive rating under 100 out of 35 this last year for PJ Haggerty. In other words, he had an offensive rating over 100 and north of 20 games this last season, 22 games with an offensive rating over 110. Doug McDaniel had 4 games with an offensive rating north of 110 this last year. 4 to 22, all right, when you look at the comparison between PJ Haggerty and Doug McDaniel, and only 10 games over an offensive rating for Doug McDaniel compared to 29 games over 100 offensive rating for PJ Haggerty. Far more consistent, far more efficient player. K-State wins the trade here for Doug McDaniel. Now, the question mark that we haven't really hit on, guys, with PJ Haggerty and the feedback from the NBA Combine and the criticism of him is he's got to become a better ball distributor and passer. Now, he averaged almost 4 assists per game this last year. He had 16 games out of 35 where he had more assists than turnovers. So he needs to cut down on the turnover rate. He needs to raise the assist numbers a little bit. Together, I think him and Nate Johnson can get it done. But the criticism will be there that he needs to be a better passer, take care of the ball a little bit better as well.
But I don't know, man. The last couple of years, it's felt like K-State has not really had a whole lot of playmakers to just go get a bucket, go get to the rim. I mean, I will just gladly make that trade if that's going to be the question mark. Like, there's going to be a question mark with almost anybody that you add. It's fair. It's totally fair to bring up Cole, but I'm just saying, I think of all the things you could be worried about as a potential question mark there. I'll take that one. I'll take that one. This backcourt seems to be way tougher. Way more, hey, you're in trouble, go get a bucket. How much? Now, I know the idea here is with Coach Driscoll in town, the offense hopefully will be better, but we've had so much frustration over the Tang era with the offense and just, play breaking down. You need somebody to go score. I'm going to take this guy 10 times out of 10 that we know can absolutely do that as well as anybody in the country.
Yeah, I mean, and I completely agree with you. Like, they need a guy that can break down a defense late in the clock, that can get to the foul line, that can finish and make plays. Like, they needed a guy like this, and they get one of the best scorers in America as a result. And as I look at the roster, guys, I mean, you take Nate Johnson, 14 points per game, 44% from the floor this last year. We already hit on some of the other numbers. Abdi Bashir, 20 points per game. Needs to be more efficient, 38% from the floor, over 38% from 3 as well. PJ Haggerty, 21.7 points per game on 48% from the floor. I mean, guys, when you think about his usage rate, 48% from the floor and 49% from the floor at Tulsa the year prior on the number of shots he's putting up for a guard is a really impressive percentage. Again, 39 of 107 from 3, 36.4%. You're going to take that. You just hope that it can carry over and continue to be consistent. Marcus Johnson from Bowling Green, now you question the fit, but he can score it. 16 points per game on 43% from the floor and 78 of 198 from 3, 39.4%, 79 of 88 at the foul line, 90%. Guys, if I just took those 4 guys that I named to you, those 4 combined to go 281 of 760 from 3 last year, which is 37%. Okay, so we just talked about how do they fit with Matt Driscoll. Well, Matt Driscoll's offensive teams have been number 1 in the country the last 2 years in 3-point rate, and they've led the country in 3-point attempts and 3-point makes, and they've been top 10 in the country for the last decade on average when it comes to 3-point rate and the number of 3-point shots they're taking. So you got guys here that can knock it down from the perimeter at a decent clip. And also, I would just say this, because this was interesting. When you add Kamari McGriffin, and this isn't even counting Kostic and Repeat and the European numbers, because it's just inconsistent to apply them here to the college numbers that I'm sharing. But if you added Kamari Griffin too at 11.5 points per game, look, 61 to 88 at the foul line for him. Guys, those 5 guys right there, not counting the Europeans in case it's added, were 570 of 698 at the free throw line last year, 82%. So I just mentioned they shot 520 free throw attempts as a team last year. And these guys collectively, these 5 had combined to shoot almost 700 free throws last year.
Okay, Cole. I do have another question to pose, though. This
Okay.
one comes courtesy of our friend Harambe. If you want to hang out with Harambe, it's on the Discord, patreon.com/3ma. He has made the point that PJ Haggerty does not have a career dunk and that there are now 4 players on the K-State roster that do not have a dunk in their career. A couple of those are guys with some actual size: Abdi Bashir, Marcus Johnson, PJ Haggerty, and David Castillo. So how are you feeling about the athleticism here? Not much dunking going on.
Well, I myself don't worry about it with PJ Haggerty, right? I'm not worried. He's proven he can score and be prolific without being able to dunk the basketball. But I do think Haramze has a good point, and there are valid concerns that, you don't maybe. I mean, that's pretty astonishing to have a couple of 6'7" guys on your roster, candidly, guys that haven't recorded a dunk in their college basketball career. And Marcus Johnson,
Bashir is still, that is one of the most mind-blowing things I've ever seen. Bashir, for the position he plays, his body type, the amount of minutes that he played, his usage rate to not have a dunk, still one of the most mind-blowing stats I've ever heard.
Who's the fourth one again? So we got Haggerty, Bashir, Marcus Johnson. Who?
Castillo.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, let's be fair, guys. Castillo went 1 of 7 at the rim. So like he never really even, had a chance to probably dunk the ball. So now, can he dunk it? I don't know. That's a question, certainly. I don't know. There's valid concerns with that. But I'm not going to get too into the weeds with it. I understand Haramze's point, though, for sure. And some of it is kind of mind blowing to think. But I would also just say, like, when we talk about last year and not finishing at the rim, guys, as I look back to the team that went to the Elite Eight with Marquise and Keontae, and I look at the rim numbers, like Desi Sills was like 65% at the rim. Keontae Johnson, like 65% at the rim. Naquan Tomlin getting to the rim at a high clip. I mean, those guys finished and got to the rim. Marquise got to the rim. Now he's smaller, so 49% when he got to the rim, but they attacked. And so can they get back to that with this roster, finish at the rim, create some shots, draw in the defense, get some open kick out threes as well? I certainly think they can. This is a home run edition for K-State when we look at the overall roster and somebody that they absolutely needed to have. So I'm excited for it. I'm not going to make outlandish predictions this year on where this team goes at this point. And I still think, guys, they need another player that can be at least average to above average. And then I would be willing at that point. If they landed one more guy that's close to above average or solid center type, I would say they're definitely making the NCAA tournament.
Well, and that's where it really helps to bridge the gap to that conversation that, as we talked about earlier, you seemingly got PJ Haggerty at a pretty good price here. Instead of, I think we were thinking it'd be more 3.5, something like that. It's now $2 million plus potentially $500K in incentives, as reported by Adam Zagoria. So now maybe you have a little bit of extra money to go find, we presume, like a big here, right? And one spot left, maybe. I mean, it depends on Tyreek Smith. I guess it depends on your confidence level and her peak being here, but I don't think that there's any reason really to question that at this point. And we'll see what happens with Tyreek Smith. But what does K-State need here, Cole? What's like best case scenario? Cole and DY, whoever wants to take that first. Best case scenario for who you add left on the roster here.
DY, you go.
Specifically, I don't know, because I don't think that there's like a lot of like known commodities or targets out there. I will say that anyone left in the portal is probably that worth any salt. I'll be honest, is probably just the super expensive ones, like an RJ Lewis or a Jameer Watkins. And my speculated, educated guess would be that I don't know if Kansas State has the remaining bankroll to secure someone of that nature, and probably not necessarily needed either, because then you probably run into a little bit of a roster fit problem with either one of those, to be quite honest, because you probably have enough in the backcourt at this point, especially from a quantity standpoint, that then you start to get some roster imbalance if you were to add someone like Lewis or Watkins. What I think is you probably can maybe find a more cost-efficient way of doing things by, and I'm guessing, going and getting a big that is potentially overseas, an international prospect, because the way that the portal has gone, I think most anyone worth their salt is already plucked away. And if there's anyone left, then they're probably going to be out of the price range.
I think for me, guys, it's probably going to come from Europe, first of all. I think if they add anybody that's meaningful and an impact guy, and I think it's probably a big. I mean, I've said that before on here, but I think that probably makes the most sense. I mean, Tyreek Smith is athletic. I think he's a good option as the starting center, assuming he gets his waiver approved, which we'll see. If he doesn't, they absolutely have to go get a big. But otherwise, you got Kamari Griff as the 5, McGriff, and then nobody else really behind him. And then Moby Ike Garuka, more at the 4 spot as well. So I think they need a security blanket as a big that can be another piece there, length, get longer. I think they're fine at guard now. And, they're longer at guard a little bit. I mean, Nate Johnson, 6'3", PJ Haggerty, 6'3". Like your number 1 and number 2 guards, you don't have that smaller size and stature at the 1 or 2. Kostic, 6'5", 6'6" as well. So they've gotten bigger there. And so I think they probably need to just focus on adding a big type center. I don't think Jameer Watkins or Lewis makes sense for this roster at this point, to what DY had said.
Yeah, that would totally be like the Coleman Hawkins kind of ad, right? I mean, it'd be the exact same thing as last year. Expensive guy, big name. You'd, I guess, be excited about it, but you'd be wondering how everything would fit together.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, what else you guys want? You want a scouting report on Haggerty? I think we already kind of hit. I pulled a couple different scouting reports on him. I think we hit on most of them, but
well, the last point I would make, Cole, is just back to the European thing. That's going to be the really interesting thing about this roster is, okay, it does seem likely that they're going to go chase a big in Europe, another overseas guy. So there's a very real possibility you are looking at 3 players on this roster who will be from overseas, who are going to be relied upon to be at least legitimate contributors, fairly significant contributors. So there's a lot more that's like really intriguing about this roster in a lot of ways than there was last year. And that can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing, but it's like, tune in, especially at every year. Say what you will about K-State basketball, but every year there's been a lot going on. I mean, there have been really interesting storylines to follow. And I think this roster is going to be absolutely no different. So I would say that. And then I guess I do have one last point on Haggerty that I'll bring up. If you want to respond to that, Cole, I'm going to bring up a tweet here real quick.
Yeah, no, I think those are all valid points. And I think we should also just not let it be unknown that he withdrew from the NBA draft as well today as part of the announcement. Now, I don't think PJ Haggerty was going to be a first-round pick by any means, but it's nice to have him pulling from the draft and know that he's going the college route and is going to end up at Kansas State as a result of that. And so you don't have to worry, and hopefully he's able to get here relatively soon. And you've got most of your roster now compiled as we get ready to head into the start of June, and you can get these guys here. Now, the question with the Europeans is how quick can you get them there? DY Kostic is going to play with his European team, or with his what is it that he's going to be? He's going to be back and forth, right, for a little bit this summer.
Yeah. That feels like it was a month ago when I discovered that, but I think he's playing with his national team or something, right?
Okay.
So.
Yeah. And I guess if you're still looking that up, John, I mean, one thing I was just going to say back to that price point thing and the $2.5 million and that number getting out there. That's a good thing, I think, for both parties, PJ Haggerty, and I think we all agree, and for the Kansas State coaching staff, because we heard what Coleman Hawkins said last year and the pressure that he faced and the murmurs and people, the $2 million man, highest paid player in college basketball. And it could have been that way if the number out there for PJ Haggerty is $4 million and he struggles a little bit at times. Like, there could be an immense amount of pressure on his shoulders as well. And so that $2.5 million number, I mean, that's like middle of the pack for quality players and this portal cycle relative to everything.
Yeah, and it is crazy. I mean, I will think back again now. I still would stand by at the time. I didn't love this messaging from Jerome Tang. This was right after the season had ended and people were frustrated. And he did that podcast interview with the Field of 68 with Scott Drew, where they were talking about how much more expensive players were this year in the portal. And we were all kind of like, man, you just got a ton of money last year and things did not go well. Maybe set the narrative a little bit differently. But I mean, they were factually correct, because look at it. Last year at this time, you're adding Coleman Hawkins and the number gets out there for $2 million. And that's a massive story about how overpaid this guy is. And it sets the bar for what the narrative was that would follow him and dog him the whole season. Now we're sitting here like, man, they got PJ Haggerty for like 2.5, dude. What a discount. Like, and it's not just us. Like I mean, Jeff Goodman here, I was about to bring up a Jeff Goodman tweet. Here's a different one that I just saw on his timeline. The last thing on his timeline says he's quote tweeting somebody, but agreeing with a guy who said K-State has to be feeling good about how this went down. Got the top guard in the portal at a discount. So, I mean, that's how quickly the price rose here. If you want a little example of inflation, I know you go to the grocery store, you see the eggs, but it's not just eggs. It's also high level players that are pulling out of the NBA draft in the transfer portal. Okay. So on Jeff Goodman though, Cole, he did have some interesting things to say about PJ Haggerty here. One being that he said, trust me, I'm not saying to always go with an agent. There are some bad ones out there, but PJ Haggerty's dad probably should have hired a good one in this case. Overplayed his hand and wound up in the neighborhood of $2.5 million for a team that didn't make the tournament last season and isn't considered a tourney team for this season. Then he followed up with Memphis offered more than what Haggerty wound up with, and he thrived last season with Penny Hardaway and the Tigers. I hope this works out for him. He still did just fine money-wise, but sometimes the grass isn't always greener elsewhere. Your thoughts on that characterization of the narrative? Because I do think, look, we're ecstatic. Why would we not be? But I do think, like, nationally, that's kind of how people are going to view this. Like, wait, okay, hold up. And then you throw on top of that Doug McDaniel, who disappointed this year generally, is like Memphis wound up with him. So it's like Memphis kind of swaps one guard for a guard who was not nearly as productive or good as him last year. And then the guard leaving Memphis is going to a non-tournament team that, was not considered to have a tournament roster before he got there. And then he got way less money than his dad was trying to push him for. So that is, if we're talking about narratives, that will be one that follows him a little bit. Right or wrong.
I guess I will say, like, the financial gap between what Memphis allegedly, or what we believe they paid for Doug McDaniel versus what K-State got allegedly PJ Haggerty for is quite the bargain, because there's not, I mean, it's a difference. It's a meaningful difference, but like comparatively to the production and the efficiency of PJ Haggerty and then Doug McDaniel, when you compare them, like Memphis overspent.
If you were doing, Cole, you're right. If you were doing like a cost benefit analysis of that thing, of like the two and what you're paying for and what you're getting on both sides, K-State, like you take the K-State deal 20 times out of 10.
If I'm a Memphis fan, I'm pissed right now. Like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh man, K-State got him for this price tag. We lost this guy and we traded him essentially for Doug McDaniel, who had a 92.2 offensive rating last year and was in the doghouse all year. By all accounts, there hasn't been any issues with PJ Haggerty. Now, I know this is going to be his fourth school in 4 years, but I haven't heard anything. And Memphis won with him last year, and he did well at Tulsa as well, and played in every game and started every game. So, when you consider all the various factors, hopefully everything works out and there's no doghouse issues here with PJ Haggerty at Kansas State. There hasn't been any at his prior stops from what we've seen. And so it's a home run when you compare the trade essentially with what happened. I don't know, DY, if you had any thoughts on the Goodman tweet or the points that he was trying to make.
If we were Memphis, we would probably feel similar. Like, why is PJ Haggerty leaving for what was not a substantial sum at the end of the day, because he didn't get near his $4 million asking price, to leave a tournament team for a team that wasn't a tournament team and still isn't necessarily a consensus tournament team. So if I was a Memphis fan, I would, I guess, have similar feelings as to what Jeff Goodman tried to put out into the ether at the same time. Like, we can't say that with 100% certainty either. Like, this Kansas State roster could overachieve and be better than what we really think. And PJ Haggerty could truly benefit from being in the Big 12 compared to the AAC at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's certainly fair. And look, there have been criticism of K-State staff. Like, they don't have like the highest bidder, right? If they're not the highest bidder, they're not going to win the recruitment. So credit to them in this sense. I mean, maybe they were the highest bidder, or maybe they were similar to others, but they won this recruitment. They strategically did a very nice job of keeping it under wraps and under the table, and were working behind the scenes. And, they didn't overpay. And so I think that's a big thing. Like, this is one instance where, while there were times last year, Anienzo and maybe even Hawkins to an extent, they overpaid, they didn't do it here. I mean, it's a home run bargain, and they did a really nice job with this recruitment and how they handled it. And similar to Nate Johnson as well.
Yeah, agreed. And that someone asked that question earlier in the chat, like, is this a legit Tang recruiting win? Like, yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. I mean, I did have people asking me on Twitter too, like, well, why? Because I said, like, hey, the coaching staff did a good job of keeping this quiet. People are like, why does that matter? Why is that a good thing? Well, sometimes that's kind of the way the prospect would prefer you keep it. And also, I think when you are talking about a lot of money getting involved, a pretty big name here, that can be beneficial for you to kind of just lay low a little bit, not create a bunch of noise. And because, people, I feel like, get frustrated when K-State's name would be thrown out there with some bigger prospects for a little while, and then pretty quickly it would fade. And, like, for instance, all those high school recruits that K-State was involved with for this past class. Like, I think that caused a lot of frustration with fans. So here it was like, well, let's not get a bunch of hopes up. Let's just conduct our business very professionally and quietly, and not try to have any other angles that we're playing or anything, and just stealthily recruit this guy. And in this case, it really worked.
And I think that, credit to the Haggerty camp too. I mean, I know the 4 million number and like all that and some of the noise around the dad initially, but they wrapped this up pretty quick once K-State got mentioned, and they didn't really use K-State as leverage to drive the price up. How easy would it have been a month ago when the Ole Miss and the reports that they're top 4, right, to throw K-State in? I mean, they could have made that public and said, hey, K-State's offering X and X. They liked it under wraps and K-State working behind the scenes. They weren't necessarily leveraging K-State. I think people thought when that Auburn report came out, right, on Friday night or Saturday, that Tahad Pettiford, if he doesn't return and stays in the NBA draft, Auburn's going to have a similar package financially. And I think that said like 4 million or linking it to that. I don't know if it gave a number, but it was that report got Adam Zagoria kind of canceled that report pretty quickly in terms of he wasn't the one that initially had it, but he disputed it and said Auburn's not involved. And, the hope all along was K-State would get this locked down and publicly announced early this week. And they got it locked down quickly and got the announcement out there and had it official. So it didn't drag out. I think we were all concerned this would drag out and then other schools would get involved as K-State's name's out there. And K-State locked it down. And the Haggerty camp didn't really leverage K-State publicly, which I appreciate.
Hey, speaking of Doug, did you see his Instagram?
Yeah, set that game up. I'd love to play Penny Hardaway in Memphis.
Okay. For those who didn't see, Doug seemed to indicate. He said the caption said set the game up. Essentially, like he wants to play the Cats now that he sees that it was basically a trade, and PJ Haggerty went to K-State and he's now at Memphis.
Yeah, and just leave him wide open on threes and let him shoot that 12-foot teardrop 6 feet up off the backboard and get ready to rebound. So.
Well, I did have to laugh. Shout out to Harambe. And he said that was the most competitive thing he had seen from Doug McDaniel in his career. So that's maybe a little unfair. Okay, Doug had a pretty nice 3-week stretch there, Harambe, but it made me laugh. It did make me laugh.
It was good. And he had the line about Doug being allergic to contact, before he hit the portal or when he was hitting the portal. So that's a fair assessment. So I'm excited to have guys that can finish at the rim and be physical, be tough, longer guards. And that's what Haggerty is. And hopefully he continue to make a jump and he can shoot the ball. And, another knock on him is he settles for too many like mid-range twos guys. So while he gets to the rim a ton, he shoots at a pretty high clip on like other 2-point attempts that aren't at the rim. And he makes like 41, 42%. It's a pretty good clip, actually, for shooting those types of shots. But I think they'd like to see that number cut down and be more threes or more at the rim as well.
Yeah, you know who else took a lot of mid-range twos, Cole?
Arthur Kaluma.
Michael Jordan.
Oh, I was trying to think of other guys. I mean, Arthur Kaluma is probably a fair one too. D-Way. I feel like Keontae took a decent number of like tough twos, but he made them. So,
yeah. All right. Any final thoughts? Final thoughts.
Nothing D-Way. Nothing from D-Way.
All right. D-Way. Yeah, like Cole. I thought you know. Yeah. No more stats left. Did we empty the entire clip?
I'm sure, I always have. I mean, I have like 5 pages in notes. I made Vanessa drive home through the pounding rain from Council Grove today as I compiled all the numbers and notes. And I kept telling her, I was like, you got to step on the gas because like Haggerty is going to announce and we got to get home and go live on 3-Maw. I think CJ Moore from The Athletic. First of all, The Athletic had him ranked as a top 5 player in the entire portal. CJ Moore on the scouting report, one of the best high volume scorers in the country, obviously. Quote, he's not an ideal fit in an analytically driven offense because he often lives in the mid-range and he's not as good of a 3-point shooter, 33.2% in his career, but he's going to get to the foul line often, draw 6.1 fouls per 40 minutes. He's relentless in throwing his body into defenders and smart about using fakes and attacking vulnerable defenders. Haggerty needs to be in a system that is more of a dribble drive approach, but give him freedom to attack and get to his spots and he will put up points. Adam Finkelstein at 247 Sports mentioned he has an unorthodox release, but he progressed on his shooting. More specifically, he was 42% on open catch and shoot threes and improved from just 10% on off the dribble threes to 33%, which, quote, may not be great, but it at least makes him a threat. The defensive end of the floor should be the next area as an emphasis as there remains growth for that side of the ball, though I did mention his steal numbers. And again, this is a guy that rebounds at a decent clip. 19 games of 6 rebounds or more last year, guys. 13 games of 7 rebounds or more. 4 games with 9 rebounds. 20 games of 4+ assists. 14 games of 5 or more assists. I always got the numbers ready for you. So I think if they can get him to take that next step, what I'll be curious about, guys, is how does he fit into the Matt Driscoll system, and how does this team fit to his offensive system that's tailored more towards shooting threes? Because Matt Driscoll's system at North Florida, they didn't shoot a lot of free throws. I mean, they were usually in the bottom 50 teams in free throw rate, and now you're adding a guy that's a huge free throw rate guy. Driscoll's a really smart guy. I think he'll figure out how to make the system work and flow, but I really love that hire by Jerome Tang. I think we all do.
You don't get to the free throw line a lot when you shoot as many threes as his teams do.
Well, here's Cole. I'm glad you brought that up because my final parting words will be: I wasn't on the show the other day where you guys talked about Matt Driscoll. I could not love that hire more, being that it's a guy who's been a head coach that Tang has worked with before. So like clearly very much would respect him. You think that's like a voice that could really get through and make an impact. Plus he's an offensive guy, and that combined with Haggerty are both things that we knew were possibilities. Haggerty, I think had reason to be more doubtful about, but we knew both of those were possibilities. And so it's probably a lesson in probably should have been a little bit more patient, because I just feel so much better about the potential of where this is going after having both of those announced in the span of a week. Like Haggerty's amazing. That's all great. But man, we have been screaming from the mountaintops. Like the coaching staff needed a veteran presence, like somebody that was really well respected. And we had a lot of trepidation about where that was going to go, especially after they lost Uric, and was not feeling good about that at all. So I do want to point that out and make that very clear. Like that, I think, was a major, major addition to the coaching staff and Tang overall this offseason with the coaching staff. I like what he has done there. And I think that's something that does show some of that humility that we were talking about. We wanted them to show, and I'm fired up for it. I'm very, very fired up for that. So yes.
We talked about the floor and the ceiling. What I would say is the floor and the ceiling after adding PJ Haggerty. What I would say is that they stand a better chance of reaching that ceiling because of the Matt Driscoll hire. Like PJ Haggerty alone probably wouldn't have me over the moon, but I'm more excited about this upcoming season now than I expected to be. And that's more so because of the combination of both PJ Haggerty and Matt Driscoll.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. It's a veteran coaching staff with a lot of experience. an offensive-minded guy now, and we know Jerome Tang can coach defense. I mean, and defense hasn't been the problem in his time here. They've been top 40, top 35 in defensive efficiency all 3 years. I trust that Jerome Tang will have the defense fine. To get a guy like Driscoll, who's an offensive-minded guy and has really developed shooters, guys. So, like, he could take PJ Haggerty that next step, Nate Johnson that next step. Like, he is – Chaz Lanier averaged 5 points a game each of his first couple of years, then went to 20 points a game, become one of the best three-point shooters in the country under his watch. He is a guy that can coach guys up. John, you heard it from the Baylor guys, right? On Lacedarius Dunn.
I was gonna drop that nugget in. Yeah, the nugget I got from some of the Baylor guys was that he was well known for lighting a fire under Lacedarius Dunn and igniting his career. Who obviously, like, great player and was on an Elite Eight team at Baylor back in the early 2010s. But one of my favorite college basketball players of all time. Certainly one of my favorite non-K-State players of all time, Lacedarius Dunn. Even that night that he hit about 10 threes in Bramlage. That dude, Lace, was fun, man. So I love that. Yeah, apparently he played a huge role in just unlocking Lace Dunn's potential.
Well, in that game in Bramlage when he torched him, remember, that was, I think it was Jerome Tang that told us the story where they had dropped a scouting report that Lacedarius leave him open or something. And he kept looking to the K-State bench and Frank Martin. And it was a fake note that that the Baylor staff had done up to motivate Lacedarius. Maybe that was Driscoll behind it. I can't remember.
We'll have to ask Driscoll about that. Yeah.
So I love the hire. Matthew Driscoll is a really smart guy, energetic guy, works his tail off, knows basketball, 16-year head coach, and a guy who coached at Baylor and helped lift that program. So it's a home run hire, and I like the staff and feel a lot better about where this next season could potentially go based off just the last week of activity that we've seen.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Thanks to our friends at Holiday Distillery. Thanks to the good people at Home Field Apparel. Thanks to Nick Springer behind the scenes for hanging out with us here. Happy Memorial Day. Thank you for being with us here for the last hour. Chat got pretty interesting with the last 10 minutes or so. Anyway, thank you all. Appreciate your support as always. And we will talk to you very soon. Take care. We'll see you.